Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Zenitsu, and we are back for another episode of underrated but awesome decks to try in the Digimon TCG. So these are going to be updated as of EX10 with the October promo packs, if any of the decks are actually going to be using them. So it's going to be a really interesting selection that we have on today's docket. If anyone's unfamiliar or brand new to the series, basically I just go over 3 decks that I find to be a little bit unique or hasn't really seen a whole lot of representation in the Digimon TCG. Not all of the decks are going to be good or highly competitive, so keep that in mind, but it's definitely something to look at and worth trying and playing around with. So if you're enjoying this kind of content and you want to see more, you already know what to do with the whole YouTube social media doobly-doo thing, and leave that like and subscribe, and tell me your thoughts about any of the decks down in the comments below. So with all that out of the way, let's dive right into the first deck and see what we're going to be looking at. And when it comes to the first deck on the docket, that is going to go to Millennium. So yes, I understand Millennium literally hasn't done anything since it was released in Special Booster 2.0, and it continues to do absolutely nothing in the current meta environment. But that doesn't mean that Bandai isn't supporting it in some mild capacity, and that also doesn't mean that it doesn't have the potential to do something. It just might take a little bit more experimentation to figure something out. Either that, or it's just going to be one of those decks where it's just designed to be a casual deck and nothing more. So regardless of what the case is, Millennium is still a really interesting deck because, well, it is a deck all about Millennium, and Millennium does have some good aspects going into him because of the resilience of what Millennium can do. So Millennium has some pretty decent removal, and the big thing that I kind of like about Millennium is he actually has trash hate, which is something that's incredibly rare in the Digimon card game, and because a lot of decks are currently trying to abuse the trash as much as possible, that could put Millennium in a little bit of a better position. So Millennium is not only just trying to remove Digimon from the field, but remove cards from their trash, which could really hose on specific strategies. Then he's got some pretty decent built-in resilience himself by being able to play out another Millennium when he gets deleted. So the Millenniumons we're going to be playing out off of him is going to be either Moon to try to hose on the opponent's hand. So if they have just a whole bunch of cards in their hands, this could really limit and take away some of their options. On top of the fact that this also has some nice tamer hate, which is never a bad thing either, and is kind of another premium in Digimon. So he's got 2 premium abilities to try to limit the opponent's strategies. And then the other Millenniumon is going to be Zed Millenniumon, which has some really powerful protection. It has the overclock ability, so that way it has extra ways to be able to aggress. On top of the fact that it's still also trying to hose on the opponent's trash is still pretty good. Then we have the option cards that are going to try to help interact and get up into our Millenniumons a little bit more efficiently. So we have Wicked God, that's allowing us to play cards out of our trash, and then when a Millenniumon would leave the battle area, we get to play out a Millenniumon that's 1 costed higher. So if we are going to have our Millenniumon get deleted, then we could play a 15, and that's going to be the Moon, or if Moon gets deleted, then we could play out the Zed. So it's just a card to help with the overall protection. Then we also have the Wicked God Emerges, which is one of the 2 promos of support that Bandai decided to give the deck, where it's just helping with its overall setup by allowing us to discard a card to essentially draw 2, which is really good. On top of the fact that the end of all turns ability gives us extra flexibility on being able to delete the Millenniumon ourselves to be able to utilize our abilities, and then we get to play out a Wicked God from our hand or trash for free. So it's just really good at being able to replay our Digimon as well as trigger some of our other abilities. Then the newest inclusion is going to be Insane Synthetic Monster. So this is supposed to be a DM card, but obviously it also works with Millennium too, where it allows us to have even more consistency in setup by drawing 2 and discarding 2, which is obviously good, on top of the fact that its main ability has no conditions attached to it, so that way we could use it pretty easily to delete one of our 7 cost or lower Digimon to play out a Chimeramon or Millenniumon from our trash, and we get to reduce the play cost by 3, which is pretty good because we do have Digicross that we could try to take advantage of. So we could use this to delete like any of our low level Digimon to play out a Chimeramon, then try to Digicross and to make the play cost of the Chimeramon even cheaper, which is really nice because if we set up a Machinedramon, then all we have to do is want to try to delete the Machinedramon while we have the Chimeramon in play, and we then get to DNA into our Millenniumon. But if we just have our Machinedramon and playing out a Chimeramon is a little difficult, we do have Mega Digimon Assembly to be able to DNA alternatively. So again, that just gives us different paths to be able to get up into Millenniumon, while Millenniumon also has a Digicross ability himself. And then to enable that Digicross play to be done a little bit easier, we have the BT19 Nene Tamer that can interact with the deck, on top of the fact that Analog Youth is going to be not only just our white source to actually utilize that option, but is a good setup card in of himself because he's digging out for Digimon and then filling up our trash with the rest, while interacting with deleting our high-level Digimon with inheritables, which is something the majority of them are probably going to have. This could definitely help us save us on some memory. So you can kind of see a lot of the moving parts and pieces in terms of how everything kind of wants to work. It's just a little bit slow at doing so because a lot of our cards cost a lot and we don't have that many ways of saving on memory, which is one of the big drawbacks of the deck and one of the deck's biggest weaknesses. Alright, and now the next deck we are going to be talking about is going to be Gammamon. So yes, Gammamon is a deck that actually has gotten a couple of little waves of support, not only just from EX10, but from BT22, and its last big one was from BT21. So the deck's support hasn't been drying up, and it's actually been getting stronger and is a more reasonable deck compared to what a lot of other people might think, which is, I guess, why it's on this list to begin with. But as far as what the deck is doing, it's essentially a stack-based deck where you're trying to go from a level 3 to a level 6 as quickly and efficiently as you possibly can, and try to close out the game utilizing said level 6 Digimon. But the deck actually goes above and beyond that because it is a deck that likes to increase its inheritable sources, so that way we could further maximize the potential of the one stack that we're going to be utilizing. And because Gammamon also has a wide variety of branching paths in terms of his evolution, and that branching paths gave him a pretty deep card pool, we have different ways to be able to toolbox the deck based on how you actually want to approach building the deck yourself. So I just have a little bit more of a streamlined build going on here, where it's kind of trying to do the best of everything that Gammamon actually can do. So obviously the new support cards is basically just going to be the brand new Regulusmon, which is the on-brand Omnimon X antibody. So we were previously using Omnimon X to close out the game as a last attack, and this card does that, except its usability is a lot higher, obviously being on brand and on theme for what the deck is doing, while still, again, doing that last-ditch effort type of attack. Then when it came to the other support from EX10, we got a brand new Gullus Gammamon, which is doing exactly everything that a stack-based deck would want. It's enabling its overall game plan by filling up our trash and increasing our inheritables, while also allowing us to try to digivolve more efficiently into our higher stage Digimon with a good inheritable ability that's on none of the other cards, so we could further toolbox the inheritables that we're going to be playing around with. Then when it came to the BT22 support, we got a new Wizen Gammamon that's going to be adding a little bit of extra defense and punch factor between blocker and piercing, and we even got a new Cost Gammamon, which is going to be helping with the overall card draw and efficiency while giving the jamming inheritable. So those are the big notable updates with the deck, and because of these new cards, on top of what BT22 was kind of trying to have us do, we're we're actually straying away from the fact that we want to turn all of our native abilities into inheritables. We're still going to be doing that because we do need to have access at the Digivolve, and right now this is the only card in the entire deck that gives us that, but the fact that we have it is still very strong and very important for us to utilize. Then when it comes to just how the rest of the deck is going to be functioning, it is just mostly still reminiscent of the BT22 variant, where we're going to be shying away from that type of ability and just trying to make our cards even more useful overall. So we have the Kana Weissmon that's going to be acting mainly as some okay-ish removal, and the protection inheritable is the big draw and reason why we want to use this card, because we have ways to be able to increase our inheritables to make our Digimon pretty big. So as long as they don't have a way to snipe our inheritables, then we'll have some pretty decent protection. And we have ways of being able to line up some other power plays to try to disrupt and force the opponent into some bad situations. So that's going to culminate into our big boss monster, which is going to be the obvious punch factor, and we're going to be using him in combination with the other level 6, which has some good control elements, to be able to try to get up into a level 7, and then again further utilize the level 7 to just win the game with. We're not winning the game on the spot by going up into the level 7, but we're going to make it a very hard Digimon for the opponents to deal with, which is the end goal. So it does have a couple of vulnerabilities when it comes to its overall game plan, because it is asking for a lot of parts and pieces to line up properly, but we have ways to be able to filter the deck a little bit better than we had before, with a decent searcher and the ability to Digivolve for free, which is incredibly strong. And we have a very fantastic pair of tamers that are going to be interacting with one another, because we have a card that's going to be able to put a Digivolution source under our Digimon, gain a memory and draw a card for doing so, and then when a card gets placed underneath our Digimon, we get to draw a card and gain another memory. So between the two tamers, we have lots of ways to be able to gain additional memory and increase our inheritables and draw all of the cards that we need, which is what the deck was kind of lacking before. Then we do just have like some generic tools, like having a good searcher, having a card that could allow us to warp Digivolve, and like you could kind of see that it is a deck that actually can stand on its two legs and be a very powerful deck when everything lines up and goes off. And then the last deck for this video is going to be one that I was playing on stream a little bit, so you could feel free to check back at some of my VODs over the past week and be able to see this deck in action for yourself. But I was messing around with the blue Aquatic Liberator deck, and it actually is a pretty feasible deck. Is it the strongest OTK deck in the game? No, but it's still an OTK deck, which means it does have that potential. The biggest weakness of the deck as of right now, based on my personal experience and how I built this version of the deck, is once you see a big wall, the game is basically over and you're just unable to clear that big wall. So you might want to add a couple of tech cards to be able to help you not get walled out by a single blocker or a Digimon that you just can't get rid of. But regardless of the weakness, it's still a very fun and interesting deck because of all of the different variety that you have, because there's like 4 different ways to be able to approach building aquatics, and aquatics at the end of the day is all doing the same thing on manipulating your own inheritables, whether that's putting Digimon in, taking Digimon out, doing whatever. It's a lot of fun and interesting types of gameplay with a deep toolbox of cards that you have at your disposal to be able to optimize and customize based on your own liking. But as far as what I found myself doing, I just am trying to go up into a level 7 and get that unsuspend and play a wide board of Digimon to be able to attack as many times as possible in a single turn. So mostly this is thanks to the Mega Seadramon being able to get an unsuspend when we Digivolve or play him out for free from our inheritables, or when we're attacking, eat something that already was a split out to be able to gain an additional attack. So we just have attacks on attacks on attacks, and that's kind of just what the deck is trying to do, is just line up those attacks and be able to get all of those checks in a single turn. because we do have cards that are going to increase our inheritables and put cards we want underneath to further optimize on our abilities. So ideally, we're going to want to try to go up into a Marine Bullmon, use Marine Bullmon to add whatever we want or need to our inheritables. And usually you're going to want some memory generation, at least a singular jammer, and we could add this either proactively or reactively thanks to our tamer being able to add sources when we're going to be attacking with our Digimon. So we have lots of really good ways of being able to increase our inheritables to further customize what our Digimon's doing. But when I swing with Marine Bullmon with jamming, I'm usually going to be gaining some memory. Then I'm going to go into Ryugu. Ryugu's going to spit out a level 4 Digimon, which we then can use with the Mega Seadramon to either Digivolve on top of and to be able to get an unsuspend, or just if he's in our inheritable, eat whatever we just played out and get that unsuspend that way. So that's really good at being able to line up additional attacks through that, even when we go up into a Ryugu, or even if we have to go up into Invisimon. Invisimon's really good because our Digimon will have jamming. It's a Liberator card, so it's still somewhat searchable for the deck, and it actually gives us access at D-Digivolve, which is incredibly premium at this point in terms of removal potential. Because then we could go up into like a Ryugu, and then Ryugu, we could use its ability after de-digivolving the opponent's Digimon and making a swing to be able to try to control the field. So we do have some control plays and some control elements, and because of how Decode works, where essentially it's like partition except for one Digimon instead of two, and it's a little bit more flexible, we just have the ability to play out additional bodies when our bodies are going to be leaving if it's not done through battle. So we have lots of decode, and we have lots of jamming and lots of memory gain, and yeah, we're just trying to basically line up a big OTK. That's kind of the deck in a nutshell, and like I said, I do have gameplay footage of this over in my stream VOD, so feel free to check that out. It's a lot of fun lining up all of the different things and figuring out how you're going to get to your end results to try to win the game in a single turn. But yeah, that's all I really have for this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Later.